In this video, I'm taking a look at the 13th round game between Fabiano Caruana and Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa. So if you haven't seen my video of the crunch game between Giri and Sindarov, then do look out for that on the channel. But anyway, back to this game. Caruana against Prag. Let's take a look at the standings going into the 13th round. So Sindarov out in front by 2 points. Okay, what about Caruana and Prag? Well, you can see that Caruana is on 50%. He's got 6 out of 12. Prag is on 5 out of 12. So with 2 rounds to go, neither player really has anything to play for apart from, well, a bit of extra prize money and, well, pride. And this game turned into a real scrap. That's why I'm showing it to you. It's really fascinating and features a great attack, some great defense, and also the opening is very, very interesting. It's an opening that I used to play with both colours, so that's why I'm particularly interested in it. Let's take a look. Caruana with white, and instead of going d4, d5, still possible to play d5 here, we've got a Nimzo Indian. Okay, so that's a bit more imbalanced. And then it goes into a kind of Queen's Indian, sort of hybrid. Now it's always interesting, you know, against the Nimzo when this bishop comes to h4. So this is a very provocative pin because, of course, black could bring the bishop back to break the pin, but okay, it's a waste of time. Really, at some moment, black is going to have to play g5, so that just immediately unbalances the position. So this is sharp. So black counterattacks by stationing this knight in the middle. And then d6, so the knight is going to appear on d7. It's actually a very old variation. I remember playing this in the mid-1980s when it was high fashion. So this knight is attacked in the middle. Now you can just exchange that off, and it's just a very unbalanced position. It's not quite clear where black's king is going to end up. Probably not on the king side because of the open H file. Sometimes the king ends up on the queen side, but that can be fraught when white sacrifices with c5 and then cracks things open, but that's possible. But instead of that, f5. I remember playing this exact variation against Tony Miles, who in the mid-80s was England's leading player and an absolute legend in England, still is a legend in England. So yeah, I had black, and I can't remember exactly what Tony did, but you know, we had a very complicated game, finally ended in a draw. And then a couple of months later, he was playing in the Tilburg Super Tournament, and he played this exact position against Beliavsky, and he played d5. So this didn't happen in our game today, but I've just got to show you this. It's a fantastic game. So, of course, that breaks the communication here and prepares to put the knight on d4. Knight c5, h4. And then in this position, just when it looks like this is okay for black, because this is actually quite okay for black. The king is going to be secure. It's not clear whether it's going to go queenside or kingside, but you know, with this knight coming here and black recovers this, black is actually fine. But Miles uncorked the move f4. Clearly prepared. Piece sacrifice, and the game went like this. And Beliavsky was blown away. Game ended after 29 moves, just a handful of moves later. Brilliant piece sacrifice, fantastic piece of preparation by Tony. I mean, since then, there have been antidotes found to d5. Nevertheless, still very dangerous move. But Caruana went in a different direction. Now, clearly this was preparation. He played c5. Typical pawn sack in this line opens up the diagonal for this bishop, and however black takes this pawn, it actually gets a little bit tricky. I mean, first thing to note is that if d takes c5, then white gets access to the e5 square, so knight e5 just looks very pleasant. Remember, you know, with these advanced pawns, it's not easy for black's king to find a safe spot, and that knight just looks beautiful. Okay, so what about b takes c5? Well, then white can play queen b3, attacking the bishop and the e-pawn. And if bishop d5, c4, I mean, this is a really tricky position. There's a lot going on there. But I think the thing to note is that black's king isn't very secure. White manages to open a lot of lines. So I think very prudently, after thinking for over 10 minutes, Pragg played knight d7. He wasn't going to get involved in that. But it does mean that after this exchange, then this pawn has been softened up, and that bishop certainly looks a lot better on g3. Castles. Queen e7 from Pragg, so that keeps his options open. He might go queenside sometimes, he might go kingside, but keeping options open. And, well, I mean, this knight is very strong. If the knight hops back, that could be exchanged, then h5. I mean, it's just a really sharp position. But at this point, Caruana thought for 38.5 minutes and played bishop takes knight. Now, normally you wouldn't want to give up this very nice bishop. But let's see Caruana's idea. So one thing is it means that this bishop is a bit more secure. But here's the point. Basically, white wants to push the knight back, hit the bishop, and then break through in the centre. So bishop b7, that preempts. Oh yeah, by the way, if h5, that's no good because of h4. And for example, g4, knight g5, that's a beautiful square. And if pawn takes, then bishop takes. And white has found security. So the bishop went back to b7, knight d2, h5, so Pragg's still going for it, but now here's the kicker. I mean, actually, don't have to play h5 here. You could just castle, but then f3. I mean, it's a very tense position, but, you know, white might push with e4. But Pragg went for it with h5. I mean, this is a really brave move. Was it brave or was it foolish? I don't know. The game went like this. Knight c4, f4. So you can see the d6 pawn is very sensitive. f4. E takes f4. h4. So this bishop is trapped. F takes g5. Okay, that frees the bishop, but now it gets taken. F takes g3, opening up the f-file. Well, it's time to take stock. So white has a lot of pawns for the piece. I think it's 3. I mean, kind of messy pawns. The king is safe. That's important. It's very difficult for the king to escape. Of course, we would love to play castles queenside. But here white plays rook f7. Beautiful move. If queen takes, then knight d6. Oh, excuse me. If queen takes rook, then knight d6 forks king and queen. So queen takes g5. I mean, that's a forced move. After this, I mean, white isn't winning. But now it's how many pawns? 4 pawns for the piece. And it's very hard to exchange off these pieces. I mean, that's tremendous compensation. So what does black play here? It's really difficult. Where is the king going to go? Rook c8 played after 21 minutes thought. And Caruana thought for 32 minutes now. I mean, this is really difficult. He played g6. So he would very much like to play the rook in. Bishop a6, so that pins the knight. Now it's a big decision. Caruana just lunged on with g7. You could also play rook f7 and go for this position. And white obviously has a nice attack. Queen against rook and two minor pieces. Very unclear. I mean, white must be better. How much better? Very hard to say. Instead, Caruana went for g7. Gave a check. Rook f7, and in this way he wins the queen, because of course if the queen steps back then knight d6. So it's just another way to win the queen. But which is better, it's very hard to judge. Now black needs to collect that pawn. So the knight comes over, and now there's a threat to play knight e8. If black doesn't do this, then that h-pawn will run down the board and it's game over. So that is the threat, knight e8, to pick up the g-pawn. So what does Caruana play now? Well, he'd obviously foreseen this a long way off before he actually played g6. Maybe I'll leave this to you. How would you play here if you were playing white? I'm getting confused now. You ever think, I'll have a drink, white to play, what would you do next? Cheers. Do you want to improve your chess? Get access to live masterclasses with yours truly? Then subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess, and for just $25 a month, you get a newsletter with a test game, calculation puzzles, a monthly opening survey, access to an archive with over 100 opening surveys. And you can join in live masterclasses exclusive to patrons, where you can ask me questions directly over Zoom. All for only $25 per month. Do subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess and join the club. Here is where you need a bit of ingenuity. Now, if you make a normal move, h4, then knight e8. And black is going to pick up the g-pawn and has good chances to survive. Likewise, if the rook comes to e1, again, knight e8. You know, any of these moves, g4, knight e8. This is the problem. But Caruana played his next move very quickly. He'd obviously foreseen this way back. d5. It's basically the only move to sustain the initiative. And it puts black on the edge of a cliff. Okay, so what's the big deal? Well, I mean, first of all, knight e8 is impossible because of queen takes e6 check. If pawn takes pawn, then rook e1 check. If bishop takes pawn, now the bishop is no longer covering f1, so the rook can come into f1. And if the knight goes back, then rook check, and that's fatal. So after d5, black only has one move, and that's knight takes d5. So that just distracts black for a moment. So knight e8 is too far away. So now you can get in h4. That's the point. So there is a clear threat just to advance that h-pawn, and it'll be game over. So it just keeps the initiative for white. Okay, there's really only one sensible way of dealing with this, and that's to put the knight back on f6. And after h5, well, knight e8 is too slow because of h6. So black has to take on h5. So Caruana has managed to get a position where he has queen against rook and bishop with equal pawns. White's pawns are pretty dreadful, but black's king is still a bit insecure. I mean, in some ways it's better than it was actually. I mean, these pieces are quite nice. They're very securely placed. So again, it's the question of whether black can get some kind of fortress here, protect all the pieces, and counterattack down the g file, or can white find some way to disrupt the coordination of black's pieces? So rook d1, start with. Okay, activates the rook, looks at that pawn here, and who knows, it might come up here. Bishop d5. So that's a good solid square, protected by the pawn, and also opens up the c file for the rook. And now some checks. Queen h4, queen a4, a nice swing. White would like to take that pawn. King d8, so that's covered. Rook f1, the rook gets into the game. Rook c3. So now the counterattack begins. Check. Queen takes a7 and bishop b7. Well, I mean, white has obviously achieved something there. But what next? You know, there's a problem here, because if black manages to take on g3, then g2 will be under fire, and white's king is a little bit insecure. It's a really difficult position. Caruana played queen b8 here. Now my computer thinks that g4 is a good attempt. Now if rook takes pawn, then rook f7 check, so that wins the bishop. That's not on. But even this isn't clear. And after rook c1, and it's not absolutely certain that this is winning. Okay, that would be good, but instead of taking, it's possible to play rook c7. And rook here threatens that. And, you know, very often black can get a blockade. So, for example, I mean, this is not forced, but just to give you an idea of what could occur. See, black can actually get a blockade here, preventing white's g-pawn from advancing. As I said, not forced, but typical of what black is trying to achieve. As it was in the game, Caruana played queen b8, gave another check. Looks scary for both sides actually now. So Prag's counterattack is coming through. And in this position, Caruana offered a draw, which Pragg accepted. So why? Well, after this, really white has nothing better than to give perpetual check, because black is taking here, and yeah, I mean, there really is nothing for white to do. You can check like this. That's a draw. That was a fascinating game. I just have a feeling that Caruana's been itching to get in that kind of prep throughout the tournament, and he hasn't quite hit. He's come close. You know, he's won a few games, but he's lost a few. But yeah, I'm sure there's so much of his preparation that we haven't seen. But today he hit big with this move c5, which certainly threw Pragg. And somewhere in there, I feel that white probably has a winning position, but it's very, very complicated. But a fair play to Pragg for defending that one, which was extremely difficult. So there we go. Let's have a quick look at the standings. Going into the final round, well, by this time you'll probably know the results of the game between Giri and Sindarov. So anyway, that's up to you. I don't want to give a spoiler, but anyway, it's a bit late now. Sindarov out in the lead, 9.5 points. first position, and he has won the tournament. Giri in second with 7.5. And then we've got Caruana and Wei Yi on 6.5. Wei Yi defeated Yestepenko, so brings himself up to 50%. But yeah, it's been a one-horse race actually. Anyway, round 14 tomorrow. And what I'm going to do is, after round 14, I will give a rundown of each of the players and how they've done, what happened, why, and yeah, look forward to Sindarov's prospects perhaps, and yeah, just recap his tournament as well. Okay, see you soon. Bye.